Let's get an update next on the mood in Team Trump from LBC's Washington editor Simon Marks. Simon, I am still trying to understand whether substantive talks have taken place, as President Trump says, or not, as Iran says.
Well, I think, Andrew, as Richard Huss was saying to you there, the talks are certainly not direct, but it does seem highly likely that there has been outreach by Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner on the American side to the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammad Khalibaf, who is a known quantity in Iran, a known quantity here in Washington, D.C. He's been part of the furniture within the Iranian regime for a good long while, and at some points in the past has portrayed himself as a reformer, but at other points has been viewed as a hardliner, indeed one who was applauding the military's put down of protesters brutally earlier this year and in the months leading up to it. Now, there are suggestions here that there could be talks that convene between those principals as early as the end of this week, possibly in Islamabad in Pakistan. But if you look at what we've gone through here since breakfast time this morning in Washington, D.C., I mean, the first point to make is that when President Trump first announced the surprise news that those 2 days of talks had occurred, the vast majority of people here in Washington, D.C. not only scratched their heads, they questioned whether he was telling the truth or whether he was simply trying to engage in action that was going to shore up the financial markets that were a couple of hours away from opening in New York. The other point to make is that the one thing that President Trump says has come out of these talks so far is that the Iranians say they have no plans ever to develop a nuclear weapon. But the Iranians said precisely that
before
in the days leading
yes.
up to the conflict during the talks in Geneva, which again raises fresh questions about why this conflict ever began in the first place.
And indeed, what happens to the Strait of Hormuz? Because depending on who President Trump's negotiators are talking to in Tehran, they have to be clear that there is still enough of a command structure and a readiness inside that country to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, which, to put it gently, seems unlikely at this point.
Well, it was extraordinary that the Strait of Hormuz was not even mentioned in the president's social media dispatch this morning, especially given the fact that the disruption to tanker traffic in the Strait of Hormuz was the reason why President Trump had been threatening to launch airstrikes against Iran's energy and power infrastructure. Later in the morning, as he was departing Florida on his way to Memphis, the president was asked what's going to happen to the Strait of Hormuz, and he said, well, maybe it's going to be under joint control. Joint control between who? Well, maybe me, maybe the next Ayatollah. I mean, it really sounded like he was making it up on the hoof as he answered those questions.
Extraordinary,
but of course, the revelation that they hadn't got a plan for dealing with threats to the Strait of Hormuz militarily has been the soft underbelly of this, I think, catastrophic American military adventurism.
Simon, to put this very simply, do you think it's true that Donald Trump is now desperate to get out of the war he started, but finding it very hard to do so?
Yes, absolutely. I think that's been the case for the last several days, Andrew. I mean, he's besieged, first of all, by the situation on the markets, by the soaring price of petrol, diesel and jet fuel here. But he's also increasingly beleaguered by the polls. There was a new opinion poll this weekend by CBS that shows 57% of the public either somewhat or strongly disapproves of his decision to take this military action. And more than 60% of the public say the rising price of petrol is not a price they are willing to pay over Iran. And remember, it's almost April and we've got midterm elections here this November. So he is underwater and desperate, I think, to find a way out.
Simon, you always bring us new news, and it's a delight to talk to you again. Thank you so much for that.